Frustrated potential. If there was a sentiment I could convey to you that summed up the experience you're in for with Star Wars Outlaws, it would be frustrated potential. The pitch of an open-world Star Wars game set in what is unquestionably the best period for Star Wars, the original trilogy, should have been amazing. So what works and what doesn't? Let's start with the things I've noticed within the first few hours of the game. The music and the atmosphere of the original trilogy is all here. There's a destroyed beauty centered around everything, as the earlier wars have been fought, and the Empire has been around for a while now. The first time you walk into a cantina and hear a mix of familiar yet new songs, and see all the alien races that immediately bring back memories of that famous cantina scene, you'll realize how much care was given to recreating the look and feel of this era. So they got the music and the sound of the Star Wars classic trilogy right. The various worlds, yes, worlds, as you will travel at will to several once the game opens up, are all incredibly detailed and full of things to see and do. You have a main story objectives, and a host of side tasks, all taking you to different parts of the world that you're on, and even different planets to explore. The ability to take off and travel at will feels like what some other AAA RPGs should have felt like, wink wink, Starfield. And flying into the atmosphere and breaking through the clouds to see a new world ready to be explored never gets old. So now let's talk about the gameplay. It's a mix of exploration-based adventure and third-person cover shooting mechanics with an emphasis on upgrading just one weapon. Everything works fine here, and I'd say it's not the best shooter I've ever played, but it's certainly not the worst I've played. But it's here where some issues arise. A scoundrel that's a bounty hunter / mercenary for hire you'd think would be just as hardened and worn as the universe itself. But Kay isn't any of those things. She reminds me almost of a classic comic relief character where complex situations that require professional people give way to the slapstick situational, quote, well, that worked out perfectly despite me having no clue, end quote. My biggest takeaway is that as a character, Kay is the worst part of Star Wars Outlaws. This is a glaring example of the quote-unquote female lead syndrome in Western games as of late. A great example of what I mean. Kay's sidekick is this little adorable alien creature that somehow has more of a moveset than Kay. You can send him off to scavenge for you or open doors. He will distract people for you or attack all upon your command. He is even an expert pickpocket. He essentially does all the stuff you'd think a scoundrel would. The developers were free to create here, but with Kay, she had to fit into this neat mold of what a female lead has to be in a game in 2024, and it's painful that they couldn't allow themselves to create for her the way they could for a small creature. It's funny that most of the aliens you meet early on are all female. Crime bosses for clans, female. Stormtroopers in the streets, 9 out of 10 times, they're females. Now look, this isn't a problem per se, but it is very strange in a universe teeming with all these creatures that they all somehow are representative of the female side of their species. So Kay is the weak link, and there is a quote-unquote push in this game, but it's not as bad as you've heard. Honestly, once I got out into the world and I started to experience all of the detail, and yes, the artists in this game definitely love Star Wars. It's a mixed bag. I'm sure there were people who knew exactly what needed to be done to make a great open world Star Wars game, and then there were the other people who aren't interested in making video games for gamers, they're interested in something else. And this game is a tug of war, it seems like, between those two groups of people. Because on the one hand, I'm out, I'm exploring, there's the sights, there's the sounds, there is a real sense of presence on these planets, in these worlds, in the original trilogy. Episode 4, A New Hope, Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back, and Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. All of those things, all the memories that you have are here and they're present. But then there are things that just pull you out of it for no reason at all, like I mentioned earlier, that seem a bit strange, but there is much, much more good than there is bad in this game, and there was a ton of hate directed towards it. And I want to be honest here, I understand a lot of it, but I think some games get dragged down in the wake of others that are just absolutely terrible, and I think this was one of them. So at the end of the day, look, I'm playing this game, and I'm actually finding it really enjoyable. I know it seems strange, but I think that this game suffered a bit too much when it came to the critiques. Now, I get it, I understand it, I addressed some of the things that happen in this game that are so on the nose when it comes to just the ridiculous nature of female characters in games in 2024, but there's much more to enjoy here than just that critique. And I think if you can get past that, now there are some games you can't get past that in. I know what games they are, I'm sure you know what games they are. And there are problems in this game. There were tons of problems at launch, problems that shouldn't be there. There are still some problems like lip sync and facial animations. They just don't look good at all. I'm not sure if this is a Ubisoft problem or it's just they ran out of cash and they just put it in other areas rather than have motion capture, even though there was motion capture for the main character in this game. So I'm not sure how they get the facial animation and the lip sync so badly, but it does happen in this game. But if you're an old school fan of Star Wars, if you feel like that old Star Wars fan that's been left behind, you remember Star Wars fondly, not the new Star Wars, but the old Star Wars. This game has a lot of that DNA in it, and just wandering around these towns, the worlds, listening to the music, listening to the sound effects, using the ships, getting on that speeder, listening to the sound of that speeder as you go through the world. There's a lot here to enjoy, and I feel like with the discount now, I think it's around $40 right now. It might be a little bit too much, maybe if it gets a little bit cheaper, but $40 is not bad for a really long, deep experience in the classic Star Wars world. Let me know what you think in the comments section below if you've played this game, and let me know if watching this video has maybe convinced you to give it a try. Maybe $40 is still a big ask for this game, but I don't think so, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised if you can look past some of the earlier critiques of this game, and maybe you're just jaded like I am when it comes to any AAA modern video game, but I can tell you this is not as bad as you have heard, and there is a lot of fun to be had. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.